Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fit for Function podcast. This week, me and Rob are talking all things kettlebell training, why we love them, the pros, the cons. We've both made some notes. I personally am a massive advocate of kettlebell training. It's something that's been a staple in my training regime for the past 3-4 years as a minimum. But we thought we'd come on and share with you why we love them, and also a couple of things to note that might be not necessarily a negative, but might hinder, would you say? So I'm going to kick off with you, Rob. We've both made notes. We do every pod, but we never share the notes. So we'll just see what you've got written down, what I've got written down. But you start with a positive. Why do you love kettlebell training?
There's loads of reasons that I love kettlebell training. And just before we get into that, Bex is absolutely right. We both are huge advocates of this style of training, but we want this podcast to be a platform for truth and honesty and truth seeking. So, there's some things about kettlebells that it's not I don't like. There's some things I feel you can do better with other pieces of equipment and some potential limitations. So, we want this podcast across the board to feel like it's honest and open. So for me, probably the biggest pro for kettlebell training for me personally and for a lot of my client base is the time efficiency element. So we know that sometimes life gets in the way and we can't dedicate an hour to the gym. And when we think about an hour in the gym, often that doesn't include the fact that we've got to get to the gym and back from the gym and getting ready for the gym and showering after the gym. So an hour's gym session probably looks like 2 hours of your day. What I love about kettlebells is the fact that you can pick them up, you can throw them around, you can get a great sweat on, whether you have 8 minutes or you have an hour. You can really dictate how long you spend training with them, providing you get the intensity right.
Yeah.
In particular, two particular styles of training I really love when it comes to kettlebell training are EMOM and AMRAP. I'll kind of, should I just walk people through slowly on?
Yes.
Okay.
Hand gestures for minimum though.
Okay. So I get told off because we've got a very sensitive camera. And if I make too many big jazz hands movements up high, the camera, it's a tracking AI camera, so it starts moving around. So I have to keep my hands kind of here, like T-Rex style.
I've never noticed how animated you are when you talk.
I'm super animated. Yeah. I know. I'm aware.
All right, rein that in.
I spent over 20 years in sales. I'm a storyteller. What can I say?
Yeah.
So AMRAP and EMOM. So let's start with AMRAP. It means as many rounds as possible. So something I like to do when I get a bunch of my clients who are the quintessential busy professional to do, I'll be like, cool, how long have we got to train? We've got 15 minutes. We've got 20 minutes. Great. Start a timer. And in that time, we're going to say, I don't know, I'll make it up on the spot. We're going to hit 10 squats, 10 push-ups, 10 rows, 10 kettlebell swings. That's a pretty all-inclusive full-body workout right there. And we are going to do that over and over again for as many rounds as possible until the timer goes off. It's brutal. It's a really brutal way to train.
It's tough.
It's hardcore.
Whenever I do my kettlebell classes and I'm like, girls are going to do it AMRAP today. Fuck.
Yeah.
Or an EMOM. Both bad.
They're brutal, which, absolutely bring me on to the next one, the EMOM. Those of you that follow me on social media would have seen a bunch of these. I love these for those who have a tight schedule. EMOM, EMOM, every minute on the minute, we are going to perform an exercise or a series of exercises. So again, we'll use the same format as before. Minute 1, we're going to do 10 squats. And then after you've done your 10 squats, you're going to rest for the remainder of the minute. And as you hit that second minute, we're going to move on to the next exercise, so 10 press-ups. And then you're going to rest for the remainder of the minute. And then on and on and on. What you tend to find is as you get more fatigued, it takes you longer to do the exercise. But even as you get more fatigued, unfortunately, that means your rest period gets shortened. So the first minute, you might be resting for 30 seconds. By the end of the EMOM, you might find that you have 6 seconds rest. And it's challenging, it's grueling, it's brutal.
And
But
that's where your body's like you're fatiguing.
it's just fatiguing.
So
It takes you longer to do the exercise.
You know what's so funny? Because when I do EMOMs, I will say, right, in the first minute, we're going to do 10 squats. And in the second minute, we're going to do 10 press ups. And I actually really like to do EMOMs as part of the workout.
Mm-hmm.
So I will do like a 10-minute EMOM as part of the 45-minute full body workout, and then pepper in like some normal reps and sets around it. And when I start, I'm always like, 10 squats doesn't seem like it's enough. We're resting for like 30, maybe like 35 seconds. And you're like, oh God, that's actually not enough. Then comes round 5, round 6 or round 7. You're like, Jesus Christ, I need more rest. So don't be deceived when you start and you're like, no, this is actually quite easy. You do a 10-minute EMOM or 15, 20-minute EMOM, it gasses you out really fast, doesn't it?
100%. And actually, one other thing that I like to do, and I guess others can do this too, but on the days where maybe I know I'm going through the motions and maybe I'm being a little bit of a bitch and I don't want to do a hard EMOM, I don't want to do a hard AMRAP, I would just put like a UFC fight or a boxing match on the TV. So like a UFC fight, generally 15 minutes to half an hour in length. And I will just put it on, kind of watch it and be engrossed in it and just go through the motions. I'll do some rows. I'll do some cleans. And my mentality is I try not to stop moving within reason for the duration of the round. And it just gives me something else to focus on. I'm kind of half in it, I'm half out, but I'm moving, I'm getting it done. So that's another little hack that I really like.
I like to add them in if I haven't managed to get some sprints in, or for a bit of cardio, or a bit of, especially if I want to go for a bit of a shred. I've got a shoot coming up, or just want to, reduce a little bit of body fat. They're an amazing way to train.
Yeah.
So time efficiency.
Time efficiency.
For you.
By far the biggest point for me.
I definitely added in efficient, saves time. But my number one, that wasn't my top one. My top one was grip strength. I think the way kettlebells train your grip strength is unlike any other piece of equipment. Because of the way you have to hold the kettlebell. The kettlebell sits in such an offset position. So unlike the barbell or the dumbbell, which is evenly balanced not all the time, but 9 times out of 10, you're holding the weight and you've got weight either side of the hand. So it's nice and balanced. The kettlebell is offset. So if you tend to be holding it in a racked position or maybe bottoms up or something where you've really got to hold and stabilize the kettlebell, the whole chain is being worked down. So you're not just, if you're doing a shoulder press, for example, you're not just working the shoulder, you're working your grip strength because you're really holding onto the kettlebell, then your forearms and your wrist, and that whole chain movement up, I think is really, really important. And then that really does transpire. I think the most where that comes in the most benefit is when you've got 10 bags of shopping in the back of the car. And I'm like, I will get this on. I will get 5 in each hand. And the bags are bulging. I'm like, this is where my grip strength comes in. Do not let me down. It's the
data that's coming out at the moment about the correlation between grip strength and life expectancy is really interesting. So the greater your grip strength, the longer you're expected to live. It's one of those really interesting markers that has really come to light in the past few years. So that transferability into everyday life, there's never really a bad instance to have a great grip strength.
And you can test that in the gym too, just on a straight bar. I think it's the best. I do quite a lot of that training in the gym. I like to do dead hangs, see how long you can hang for it. Again, the longevity is connected because it's not just, if you've got a strong grip, the chances are you've got a strong push, you've got a strong pull, because all of that is being determined by, well, you can only measure that by gripping something. So that was my number one, was grip strength.
Yeah, and you talked about, the way the kettlebell sits. This isn't great for anyone listening on Spotify, but on YouTube, this would be a little bit better. If we take this pen, I have to be very careful about the hand gestures, right? So a dumbbell sits in and a barbell sits in the hand, right? So the placement is it's at the end of the lever, but it's inside. And as you said, it's usually pretty well balanced and distributed on either side of the hand. What a kettlebell does is, even though whilst you hold in the same way, the same grip, the weight sits at the end of the lever. So it creates an enormous amount of tension and torque. Like you say, if it's in a racked position, up on your shoulder or even overhead, there's an extra grip component that is required, simply just having to hold the kettlebell in place.
Yeah.
Now, yes, of course, you have to still grip hard on a bar or a dumbbell, but when if we're racked here and you've got a dumbbell, it's just sat aligned. But if the kettlebell is hanging over one side, it wants to pull you away. And actually, that's what I wrote as my second point, is I love the offset, and instability, factor of a kettlebell.
Yeah, definitely.
Particularly if you're training singles. Doubles, you generally get a little bit more balance just because of balance,
Yeah.
because it's evened up. But
The unilateral.
I love the fact that you are constantly required to stabilize, whether that's through the clean motion. Now, it makes sense, right? If you are 20 kilos heavier on one side, then your body's going to have to adapt to accommodate and keep you upright, to keep you locked in, to keep you secure. So what that tends to do, and certainly what I've found, is it tends to just add a stabilization element to it.
Yeah, it was actually one of the points that I put down actually. Not necessarily it links in with stabilization, but why I love kettlebell training is because it highlights your muscle imbalances. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're doing double kettlebell training, you're not going to get this as much. Because double kettlebell training is so tough. Like for me, it's a different level of training. Like I feel like you might be wrong. I might be wrong, but I think you need a basic knowledge of kettlebell training before you go into double kettlebell training.
Yeah,
unless you're doing like maybe squat in the gym and you've got 2 weights just to try and get a bit more weight, but like that, the actual style of double kettlebell training with like double swings, double cleans, snatches, stuff like that, like it requires so much. It's such a tough way to train. But 9 times out of 10, you're doing unilateral style training, which is where you train one side and holding the weight in one side. So like you say, with the stabilization, it works so many more muscles than the one muscle that you're looking to work, which is why I absolutely adore kettlebell training. But not only that, it really highlights your muscle imbalances. So take the windmill, for example. You're holding the weight up overhead. There's thoracic rotation going on. There's loads of muscles working. One side will feel fantastic. You'll move, you'll bend well. And then you go to the other side and you're like, oh shit, this is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say to people, because that's something that people notice the most, is that they're imbalance. I think a lot of time that can keep you motivated. For me, I'm like, well, it's not amazing, but I'm like, that's amazing because now I've got something to work on. But I need to train that right side a little bit more because it's lagging here. Or I think it's really, really, I think it's a good way to spot sort of weaknesses in your training, really, for you to work on and develop and get stronger.
It keeps you very honest. And actually that's one of the reasons that I don't do much bar work out in the gym. I like to, with the exception, I do heavy, if I'm doing heavy bench, generally I will pepper in bar just so I can get really behind it and push it. But I like dumbbell, I like kind of single dumbbell movement, not necessarily single as in using one, but I like there to be an independent kind of nature to my training. So deadlifts, it's almost impossible to get away from. If you want to deadlift heavy, it's impossible to get away from a bar. If you want to squat heavy, it's almost impossible to get away from a bar. But everything else, I generally try and avoid the bar just because you will have one side stronger than the other.
Yeah.
And that generally gets a little bit lost when you're using the bar because one side will be compensating. And as long as the bar is moving, you think everything's fine. But you tend to notice it a bit more with dumbbell training, and you definitely notice it a lot more with kettlebell training.
I think you notice that as well when you're experienced in the gym. If you're not experienced and you don't know your body, and like I think if you do a specific sport like we do, you know that you've got your more dominant side. So when you're training, you're aware of what side's stronger. But if you're just going to the gym, you might not be picking up on that as much. Like if you're doing a shoulder press with a bar, a bench press, you might just be pressing it up and you're not really feeling those compensations as much. So I think the kettlebell, there is just no hiding from the compensation.
Yeah, I agree. And you touched on the sport element. I think it's one of the best tools to be using in a sport specific capacity. So you've seen it on the pole, and on the hoop, and in the aerial game in general, particularly because of the compromising positions you guys put your bodies in.
Yeah.
I see it on the jiu-jitsu mats for similar reasons.
The two sports are so heavily
very
linked, aren't
similar.
they?
Very similar.
And I think for that, the two, I think both with pole and jits, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, we all move in a unilateral type of movement. If you're escaping or if you're doing on pole, it's a lot of the time it's one side. So I think for that style of training it's not compensate, I'm looking for, it's not compromise either. The word begins with C. Complement. Sorry. It complements the cross training really well.
Yeah, I think it's amazing actually how many sports I've seen, like sports athletes using kettlebells either as a primary or as certainly as a secondary conditioning exercise. If you think, just take grip and forearm strength. Where does that come invaluable? And the widespread kind of sports where that could be something. So that could be certainly we know martial arts based sports, gymnastic based sports. Racing drivers need to have a great grip strength or great form strength. Tennis players, it's really broad. Pole vaulters, when they hit that pole into the ground. So, and generally, I look at it as kind of like human performance.
Yeah.
Once you start unpacking human performance, I was having this conversation today actually at the gym, and again, we won't go too far down the rabbit hole on sport specific. I train pretty much exclusively because I'm 37 now and I'm aware of it. My body is starting to feel like I'm creeping towards 40. I train for longevity and I just train to keep my body strong, healthy, flexible, malleable, and in good condition. But I'll be doing stuff in the gym and I'll be like, this is kind of jiu-jitsu specific. It's not. It's just that I can see how it lends itself to, and I think you could insert any sport there. When you're deadlifting or squatting, you could be like, I could see why this would be valuable for rugby players or
any form of cross training. If you're doing a sport, regardless of the sport that you're doing, there's no athlete when you look at what you're doing in your sport. So insert X sport, and then you look at who's at the top of their game in that specific field. Near enough every athlete will be doing some form of cross training.
You're crazy if you're not doing something to accommodate.
Well, it was actually something that I read about. I know we're going a little bit off topic here, but I did a lot of research on how gymnasts do their S&C. And once upon a time, and I think this comes back to, and I think we're all aware of this from like dancers and ballet dancers, how they're pushed into sort of certain positions and training over training. And it was only recently, I don't mean recent like in the last couple of years, but recently in maybe in the recent history, yeah, absolutely, where there's been a link where they've gone, oh, hang on a minute, we've got all these gymnasts that are getting injured. Maybe we need to introduce some form of S&C training. And then what their S&C training looks like is really, really interesting actually, because of the movements that they add in. Even if that's with dumbbells, but a lot of kettlebell work, unilateral work. And yeah, it's really interesting to see how the sport recognised that there was actually all these athletes over a period of time that kept getting injured. And there was something that needs to change, and now it's built into because their training seasons are done over maybe a year or so, how those S&Cs are built in to make sure they accommodate. So yeah, it's pretty much everyone
to peak from big events and stuff.
Yeah. But even sports that weren't necessarily doing it maybe prehistoric, it's a huge part of training now. But yeah.
On the flip side, we talk about the sport specific element, and I'm aware that whilst a lot of the audience, we are aware that they generally have some sort of sporting outlet, whether that's, your audience that followed you across from the aero acrobatics world, and then kind of the fringe associated sports like gymnastics and dance and, acrobatics and stuff and then obviously, the people that support from my side that generally tend to be more martial arts based, or even going back to like my football years. But for those that don't have a sport as such, and you are working in an office 8-10 hours a day, you cannot be overlooking this stuff. the stuff that you'll be doing kind of just in S&C in general, not just with kettlebells, but kettlebells are great, particularly for the desk bound. Having a strong core, making sure that you have glutes that can engage and fire quickly, because sitting in a chair all day is fucking horrible for your body. And
It's also the compensation you make when you're in the chair that you don't even know.
yeah.
Like, take me right now, sitting cross-legged. It's awful.
Mhm.
I'm a bit comfortable right now, but if that's what happens when you see people one leg up, they're sat on their foot, or maybe they switch. And
I mean, I've always sat kind of in this kind of semi cross leg position.
so you're sat on one hip.
I'm sat on one hip, so I'm always kind of So you're right, we have kind of gone way off, but I think those are important things just to kind of to talk about.
Yeah, just because you do a sport, or if you don't do a sport, that doesn't mean you shouldn't neglect kettlebells. Because it's so interesting the amount of people I speak to on consultation calls that go, I've never even trained with a kettlebell before. I'm like, honey, you're missing out. They're so good.
It's amazing to me the amount of people that scoff or laugh at me when I talk about the fact that if you want to progress in your career or you want to perform better at work, behaving like an athlete is essential. And people like laugh it off. Well, I'm sat at a desk all day. I don't need to be an athlete. Wrong. You need to have a body that can allow you to not get uncomfortable. You need to be hydrated so you can be switched on and have good focus. You need to be fueling your body in the right way so that you're not fatiguing. Because it doesn't, I mean, we are going way off topic now, but it doesn't go unnoticed, right? If every day at 2:00 you are starting to fall off the cliff with the afternoon slump, and the guy next to you isn't, who's the guy going to get the promotion when it comes around? Like, it's being desk bound does not mean you should not be treating your body like an athlete. And I get ridiculed for it, particularly on LinkedIn quite a lot, but I'm right.
Yeah. Well, going back on topic with KBs.
Yes.
Another reason why I like kettlebell training. And this is a little bit specific to me and why I really, really love it. But it's shoulder stability.
Mm-hmm.
Trained all of the small stabilizing muscles, so good scapular control, training the rotator cuff. But I know that I really like it for that reason. But it's amazing how many people will put their shoulder out, or just do something and rotate it the wrong way, or go to sleep on it funny. Sometimes that can't be helped, but that the weakness of the shoulders. And I always say to people, you only get one. I know you get a set of two, but you only get one set.
Yeah.
You can't get a shoulder replacement surgery. So try and protect your shoulders for as long as you can, because even if that comes to, it's what we spoke about before, if you've got injured shoulders, like, you can't pick up, and then that means I can't pick up row.
Yeah, can't pick up your kids.
For example, or grandchildren.
Yeah.
It hinders you quite a lot. We've all had a sore shoulder at points, right? And it does have a massive impact. I mean, I've had a sore shoulder before, and even cut.
Yeah. Pushing your door, pulling your door.
Yeah. So I like it for the real shoulder stability that I get in my sport, but training your shoulders for longevity, and protecting them more than anything is really important.
If we look at the position we spend a lot of our days, so again at work, we generally tend to be hunched over, rounded.
Yeah.
In this position. If I can get that kind of on a side-on view for those that are watching, I'm now rounded in my shoulders on my phone.
Head down.
It's horrible for you. So, training in a way that's going to allow you to kind of offset that a little bit, because the genie's out the bottle, right? We're not going backwards in terms of technology. We're locked into this kind of posture forever now, I think.
Yeah.
So
they're very good for that, and engaging the shoulders. And then we've covered the main ones. The only other one that I wanted to talk about really, and again, I love it specifically for what I do, but it's really, really good. Again, linking back to if you sit at a desk, and for your hips, glutes, stuff like that, and especially lower back, but posterior chain strength. So I think it's something that's really heavily overlooked. You might train a little bit of your posterior chain. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful. Then. Maybe if you're doing deadlifts or stuff. So your hip power and posterior chain. Let's start with the posterior chain. It's all the way down from the lower back down to your glutes, hamstrings, calves. And I'm tying in hip power and posterior chain in the same point, because the posterior chain is all the way, like I say, just down the lower part of your body. But the moves that you tend to do to train the posterior chain include hip hinging movements. So kettlebell swings, stuff like that. Windmills. So having that strength through your hips, the mobility, generating power, because that even comes in the most basic form of standing up. You need to drive through the heels to get up and drive power through the glutes to actually just stand up. Now that might sound a bit crazy and a bit over the top, but it's true. And a lot of people, especially who work at desks as well, get real bad lower back problems. Now, I'm not saying that a couple of kettlebell swings will fix that, but just training and thinking about your posterior chain, I think is really, really beneficial. But in my line, what I do for people that do listen and carried over, we're very explosive. The same with what you do in your sport, very, very explosive. And where does that power come from? It comes from the hips, it comes from the glutes. So we want to be strong through that range of motion.
I'm convinced, I've spoken about this with physios, I'm convinced that one of the reasons that I have glute and lower back issues is I would sit at a desk all day. So let's say 8-10 hours at a desk. And then after work, I'll drive straight to jiu-jitsu and then be in these compromised positions that I'm required to explode out of with like hip explosive movements. And even with a good warm-up, it's just the kind of juxtaposition, because then I go to bed and then the next morning I'm sat back in that desk position, kind of everything shortened, everything tightened. So no, I'm with you completely.
BJJ, I actually think even jiu-jitsu is even more so than pole, because the explosive nature of the sport is huge. And again, that's another little side thing.
You guys are fighting against gravity. We're fighting against gravity and another human being trying to put you in a position you don't want to be in, right? Yeah,
and if you're trying to push up against them or move out to the side, you're in these weird positions. So you need that explosive power to be able to get up and get out. So yeah, hip power and posterior chain strength, I think, is a huge, huge benefit. But the one that I actually want to cover really quickly, you've touched on it, but I think it's really important to deep dive on it a little bit, is core strength. Because kettlebell training, exactly what you said about how you need to stabilize through so many different through so many different muscles, your core is challenged and worked in a way that's unlike anything that I've done before. You've really got to stabilize your body, and a big chunk of that is your core. And I'm not just talking about the prime movers. So the prime movers, essentially sort of the six pack that you see, they're the ones that everybody wants, and you train those by your little crunches and stuff. But if you take a sport like I do, I need deep core strength. And not only that, it comes in with the posterior chain. It all wraps around, it links together, it's being strong. And the kettlebells train that in such a unique way, because of the way that your body needs to stabilize, your core needs to be switched on, it all interlinks. So I think your core strength that you get, and again, like if we link that back to every day, sitting at a desk, getting up and down and moving, maybe playing with kids or grandkids, your core is your whole midsection, it's your whole trunk, having that strong. Because a lot of the time when people have lower back issues, again, I'm speaking in such a broad term, but a lot of the time it stems from a weak core. So I think, training that, strengthening the core, can help prevent those issues down the line too.
Yeah, it's something I think that's really overlooked. When we think of core, we think of six pack.
What everybody wants.
Yeah, the show muscles.
Yeah,
the mirror muscles.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is. Your core is your the six pack. But the best way to describe your core muscles is as a corset. They run all the way around, and they keep you upright and they keep you solid. So when we talk about core, we are not just talking about your the six pack aesthetic. We're talking about the whole thing, right the way around through your back, and down your sides as well. It is one big like I say, corset that like I say, it gets overlooked quite a lot, I think. So
that is the best way to describe it.
It's like a corset.
It is a corset, yeah.
Holds you all in, keeps you tight. So you need to train it as such, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's some really, really good points. And everything else I wrote down, you already mentioned anyway. Saves time, functional strength.
I've got one more for pros.
Yeah, go.
One of the reasons I love kettlebell training is the mix of training intensities available to you.
Yeah.
So you can train in a traditional hypertrophy manner. So again, loosely, right? Everyone's got their own take on what hypertrophy looks like, but let's call it 3 times 10, right? Three sets of 10 reps. Heavy through those movements. Great. You can certainly do that with kettlebell training, but you can really push muscular endurance.
Yes.
So you can like push that lactic conditioning and get a really good sweat. So a kettlebell workout could turn into a cardio workout, really.
Yeah.
Whether that's again through EMOMs and AMRAPs or whether that's through flows and complexes, which we can dive into a bit more in a second if you want to. If you want to strength train, get really explosively strong in a lower rep range through things like cleans and presses and swings. There's so much available to you with just kind of this one magic piece of equipment. Now, of course, the weight is going to have to be relevant, but I don't know if anything gives you quite the same level of diversity, particularly when it comes to flows and complexes.
I love flows and complexes. So when we talk about flows and complexes, I think a complex, this is my take on it, you might agree, disagree. A complex is when you might put a bunch of moves together, but you might do 5 reps of a deadlift, 5 squats, 5 bent over rows, 5 cleans, 5 press. That would be a complex.
Yeah, I kind of like you stack them up.
Yeah.
You should block.
And that number could be as big or as you want.
Yeah, it could be, it still could be like 1, but they generally, I see them as like separate. So it's like 1 of these or 3 of these or 5 of these, then this, then that, then that.
But with no rest.
Or generally no rest. Yeah.
That's how I personally see it versus a flow that would be one, like a flow for me would be like a deadlift, bent over row, clean, press, windmill, swing. A collection of moves that you're only doing once, but then you do it again and again. And like I like to actually go, I actually try and do like 3 on one side, like 3 reps on one side, 3 reps on the other side. But they're tough. Flows are really, really hard. And that's where I think it ties in the muscle endurance and stamina because, but then the downfall there as well is that you can't train as heavy through those flows.
But then again, that's not the objective, right? The objective is that it's really interesting. You'll see some amazing, like there's a guy called, he's got a great name. There's a guy called Wes Beans on Instagram. He's got some awesome stuff in and around kind of flows and complexes. Yeah, I'd be really interested to know what other people think the definition is. I don't know for sure, but I agree with you. That's how I kind of.
On an absolute side note, we follow people that have kettlebell trained Primal. Is it Swole?
I think his name is pronounced Eric Lilla. I'm not sure. But yeah, Primal Swolger is amazing.
Yeah.
Francesca, I think her name is Francesca Martinez. She goes by Francesca Fit. She's awesome. She's very flow and movement based. She's very, very good.
And I follow these people that are part of, like, they do a kettlebell like 6 a.m. club in America, and they're like on top of a rooftop, which is really, really cool. But sorry, that distracted me. The cat's meowed. Don't let the tracker see you. One thing I can say is the majority of people that I have seen that do kettlebell train are fucking shredded.
It does seem to be
there are obviously different ways of training and stuff, but the majority of people who KB train are in unbelievable condition. So yeah. But anyways, a little bit of the negatives. Well, not negatives, but things to be mindful of when you're.
I'll call them negatives because I think there's a couple here that for me are negatives, and there's a reason why. I'll include certain things for kettlebells into my training, but there's certain things that won't make it into my primary program.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm training from home and I've got to get it done, then I'll make these accommodations.
Yeah.
But there are certain things, and the big one for me, as you know, my biggest grievance with kettlebells is I think it's really hard to fully and in the right intensity train your chest. I think that's for me the biggest weakness. Yeah, you can do floor press, but obviously you don't get the full stretch. That's not to say you couldn't use kettlebells on a bench or on a block. At which point I'm kind of like, for shoulder safety and security, I'd rather use a bar or dumbbells. You can use some deep, you can kind of deep push up.
Yeah, that's how I've been offset. That's how I've been combating it.
But then with a push up, then you're restricted as to the weight.
Yeah.
You know, so there's just that it's not to say you can't build a great chest from kettlebells. I just think there's better ways.
It's just the depth, isn't it? A lot of the time.
It's the depth and the weight generally for me are the two things. So the depth if I'm pressing away from myself, and the weight if I'm doing press ups.
So for me, just as a combat to that, one thing that I do to try we're ignoring it. One thing that I do to combat that is keep the intensity high. So if I'm doing offset or monkey grip press ups where you'll use the kettlebell, you have your hand on the kettlebell and so one side of you is slightly elevated, one side on the floor, then I'll superset that with press ups straight away to try and keep the intensity nice and high. Or I've used the kettlebells to elevate, do press ups, get really deep, almost mirror like a dip position, but that still doesn't combat what you're saying with the weight essentially.
Yeah, like I feel like you can have one or the other, not both.
Me and Rob go back and forth on this.
But you can get great volume, great depth. Those push-ups are phenomenal. Again, you'll build a great chest with that. But you won't be able to go as heavy. So you could really get volume. You can get some really nice time under tension, nice clean, slow reps. So there's a lot of great stuff you can do. My thing is that you can't do both. So you can't go heavy. So if you go heavy, like on a floor press, you won't get the depth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get the volume in, you won't get the weight. So it's not that you can't. That's just where
something's compromised.
You have to compromise a little bit on chest. But again, that's not to say you can't build a phenomenal chest. You look at some of these calisthenics guys and girls.
Yeah. And you make it more in line with that personally. That's the way I combat it. And like Rob said, it doesn't mean that you can't build a strong push. It's just that maybe if you were taking a strength sort of building phase, or, you aren't going to, the incline press with a dumbbell or a flat bench would always be a preference if it was available to you.
Yes. And there's a reason, right? Because I know you still do 1 day a week in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that there's always a chest exercise built into that program.
Mm.
And again, just to be very clear, I'm not saying you can't build a great chest, a strong chest, a powerful chest, a good push from kettlebells. I'm just saying you can't have both elements to it. So for me, rather than kind of fuck around with one or the other, I'll just go and do something else instead.
Yeah.
So that's all that's all it is for me with the chest thing.
Yeah. And then for me, I suppose that ties in with one point, but I want to go to another point before that, is the limited load that you can put through kettlebells. And I think that links in with sort of what you're saying.
It's hard to go heavy is what I wrote.
Yeah, and it is.
On some exercises.
Yeah, it really, really is. And there's a time and place for some as well. Like I've had a lot of people say to me, I really struggle to push my weight up in bottoms up press, for example. So bottoms up press is where you're holding the kettlebells, really what I would do for grip strength. And then perform a shoulder press like normal, but you're holding the kettlebell at the handle, and you've got the weight above you. So you're holding everything upright. It's really, really, really difficult. But that isn't an exercise that I necessarily look to go. That isn't really a strength building exercise in terms of you might progress. If you're starting at like 6 or 8 kilos, you might be able to push up a little bit. But there comes a point where you're like, we're not looking for strength there. Really, so some exercises you just wouldn't necessarily look to load, but your big compound movements, and I actually say that to my girls at the studio quite a lot, who will be using maybe a slightly lighter weight because they're comfortable there. If you look at the metrics, and I know this isn't going to apply to everybody, but in an ideal world, if you could squat your body weight, that's a good place to be. Isn't it really, right? So
well, that is considered to be the kind of the go-to strength metric for,
right.
Can you squat your body weight?
Squat your body weight? So if you weigh, let's take 60 kg as an example, and you're squatting with a 10, at first, if you aren't used to that weight and you're not really used to cross training, that is going to feel tough. And, you're still going to get a bit of sweat on. It's still going to be a bit of a challenge. But when we look at down the line, and as you progress through your training, if that is a marker of strength, could you do a 60 kg squat with a kettlebell? No, you couldn't, so that's where like it links back into the using barbells, but also like you thinking about the weight that you are using. If that was a metric that you're aiming for, if you're still using 10 kg and you've been training kettlebells for a few weeks and you're still only using 10, that's quite light in the grand scheme of things as well,
Yeah, if that's relative to your strength, for sure. I agree. It's the two things that I just feel like you can go really heavy on shoulder press, you can go really heavy on rows.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get, like, once you're into your training fully, like we've been training forever now. Like if you're just coming into your strength journey, then like a 16 kilo deadlift with a kettlebell might be really fucking heavy for you.
Yeah.
And that's cool. It's all relative, right? We're not here to kind of, because by the way, I've never been strong, like traditionally strong. I've trained my whole life. I've just never been strong. In terms of those metrics, like I find it incredibly hard squatting my body weight. I find it incredibly hard bench pressing my body weight.
Is that the metric too? You should barely bench press your body weight.
Bench and squat your body weight, and should be able to deadlift 1.5 times your body weight. Yeah.
Well, I think it's 1.5 for if you're a bit more advanced. I think it's 1 and then 1.2 as you progress through. Look, even that is.
So funny enough, my deadlift is really decent for my body weight, my frame, and the fact that I'm kind of disproportionately long. My deadlift is very good, but squatting and bench pressing very, very difficult for me. But my pulling movements have always been very strong.
Yeah.
But anyway, coming back on track, right? So if you want to go heavy, there's just better options.
Yeah.
However, then you can start playing with things like, say, time under tension.
Yeah.
So let's say, because this is one of the biggest things, and I guess one of the cons. I kind of made a bit of a hybrid note here. It's kind of, I put it in cons and then also things to kind of think about. One of the challenges with kettlebells is you have to acquire kind of a collection, like we have.
Yes, that's totally right.
So let's say, again, let's just use a random number, right? Let's say you have a 12 kilo kettlebell, and that's great for shoulder press and all, that's heavy and good for you. And then it comes to squatting, but it's too light. Slow it down.
Yeah.
Add more reps. Can you go offset? So there's lots of ways that you can kind of find ways around it.
There's variations, isn't there, that you can add in that challenge the body a little bit more.
But if you're just looking for traditional strength, I don't think anything's going to beat a barbell back squat.
No, you know what's really interesting that you said that, actually, because that's just a really good point. That is the question that I'm asked the most by far in DMs, comments, everything, is what weight do I need to start your kettlebell program? And that is really, really, really difficult.
It's such a hard question to
because it all depends on your current strength. Like if I started kettlebell training right now, as I am, of having the strength I have now, a 8 kg isn't going to cut it. But if you've never done any form of cross training, like you say, a 8 kg, it's probably going to be quite challenging for you and quite heavy. So it all depends on where you are in your strength journey. But you're only going to figure that out by playing with a few. I say to some people, like, come to the studio that are local to me, obviously, or come to class, pick up a few different weights and see what feels comfortable for you. So if you're going to a gym, that's a really good starting point. But the biggest thing is what you can press is not going to be the same as what you can squat. So you might be able to press a 6 or 8 kg, and that might be a bit of a challenge for you.
Yeah.
But like you say, come to squat with an 8 kg, it's probably not going to be too light. So a collection, you do need a bit of a collection. But then I haven't come across anybody that started kettlebell training, because obviously it's a big part of my client base too, the kettlebell train, that doesn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
So then when people do start, people buy more kettlebells and they have this huge collection in their house, and then they try double kettlebell training and stuff like that. But you do need a couple, really. I always say people start with like a 6 or an 8, but within, like, I'm talking 2 weeks, you're going to be looking to progress.
Yes. It's funny because I was just thinking that I was listening to you, but I was also drifting off into thought, thinking about exactly that. It's like with anything, right? With any style of weight training, you want progressive overload.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of points I'd like to make on this. I was trying not to jump around too much, but something I find when I kettlebell train, I don't know why this is, but I tend to move through the weights quicker in kettlebell training than any other method of training. Like the strength increases come very quickly for me in kettlebell training. I don't know why. And look, we're very fortunate in the sense that because we own a fitness facility, we have a shit ton of kettlebells. I think they go up to 30.
Yeah, but
Hey.
my girl's getting so strong right that I need to buy more. It's so outrageous. They cost me so much money.
Yeah, I see the photos, and the dynamic girls are looking absolutely shredded.
They go up
in
to
boxes.
they go up to 28 kg at the studio.
Right.
But I have 228 to 224, so you can add weight, but that's not enough.
No. So yeah, I tend to fly through them quite quickly, so that can get annoying.
On the flip side of that, really quick to add on, sorry to jump in, the progression in weight load is quite a jump. And if your gym doesn't, that's one thing that I think is a bit of a negative, and one that I did put on here is equipment access.
Right.
So in your gym, you might, and this is what I come across a lot with a lot of my clients, their gym might have 8 kg, but then the next jump is 14 or 16.
Even 12, right?
Yeah, or even 12. But a lot of the time it's the 10 and 12s that are missing, and they have 8, and then it goes up to 16, and they're like, I can't, that's too much of a big jump.
I do think gyms are becoming better equipped and have identified that there is a greater demand for kettlebell training.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do. But again, the problem is, right, and now we're really fucking nerding out on kettlebells. Like, where we train, quite a high-end health club, has a good range of weights, but shit kettlebells.
Do you mean, I was about to say that, do you mean like the actual
kettlebells are shit?
That tends to be the same in most gyms. Shit kettlebells.
Shit quality kettlebells, probably because they're buying them cheap. I think, perfect world, competition kettlebells are amazing. Second to competition kettlebells, just good old fashioned cast iron kettlebells with big handles.
Do you think big handles?
Not thick handles, but like a good.
Oh, good horn.
I don't want a good horn. I don't want like a couple of inch handle. I want to be able to get my hand in and grip.
Right. You mean like the actual.
I want to be able to hold the handle in any position, whether it's at the top or the sides.
Yeah. That is, so our whole collection of Dynamic is all cast iron. The cast iron is the best kettlebells that you can buy, and I say to people all the time, don't get plastic. Plastic are the fucking worst. Like,
that being said, sorry to interrupt. That being said, if you are just starting out, I've been giving this some thought recently, literally off the back of a conversation with a client. So all of my clients, because they are the high performing busy executive, all my clients are mandated to get kettlebells. It's a requirement to train with me. You must have a kettlebell at your disposal, because it's highly likely that a meeting is going to run long, or you're going to go a last minute travel, or the risk of us not being able to train is significant because of what they do for a living. So you must have a kettlebell. So with that in mind, the risk is, I don't know what weight you should start with, particularly if it's a remote client and, an online client. I've actually never met you before. The only real understanding I have of you is how much you weigh, how old you are, and a progress photo to kind of look at you and think, well, you're kind of in shape or you're not. So what I would perhaps encourage, plastic kettlebells are shit. Bottom line.
Yeah.
However, jump on FacePay and buy a £4 in currency, £4, 10 kilo kettlebell. It'll be a bit shit, but then you'll get an idea.
Babe, if you're picking up a kettlebell for £4, you're lucky.
You know what I mean? Like those.
They're so expensive.
Yes, kettlebells in general, but like one of those cheap, shitty plastic ones just off FacePay that someone's using as a doorstop. Like, go and buy that just to test the weight, see kind of where you're at, and then go invest in a cast iron.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Yeah. It's really interesting though, because some places have thicker handles than others. So I've bought some kettlebells, and I used to buy kettlebells a lot of time from a place called Fitness Superstore. I've always loved them because they're just all cast iron. But some of the KB handles are thicker, and that's what I thought you were referring to just a minute ago, because some of the kettlebells at the studio have a skinny, like in terms of width. So I'll have some girls that will say, I don't want to use that 10 kg because the handle is like so much thicker.
Girthy.
It is really girthy, yeah. So that's what I thought you were referring to. But yeah, cast iron all the way. But sorry to just jump back to your point. You were saying that you feel like you progress a bit more in weight with kettlebells. What you feel like, what you jump, you can jump up more.
Through weight quicker, yeah.
Interesting. Well, the last point for me on a bit of a negative of kettlebell training is, if you don't know what you're doing, which is totally fine, but even if you're quite an experienced trainer, and by that I mean, a couple of years in the gym, or, you've gone to a couple of classes, people still don't know how to kettlebell clean. or snatch. They are such complex movements. That it isn't just a case of just picking the kettlebell up and bringing it into your side. There's a lot that happens with the rotation of the wrist, the way the elbow flares and then pulls back in, for example, the way it needs to sit. I always have people messaging me pictures of the bruises on the forearms and saying like, this is really sore, should this be the case? And I always say in my class, I'm like, if this is happening, this is a red flag, because it shouldn't be happening, and it's happening from incorrect form. And that doesn't just go for cleans and snatches, although they are really big ones, especially a snatch, because of how demanding it is on the shoulder. You need to get that right. I'm talking even like a kettlebell swing. I see so many people actually more do a squat.
It's like a semi-squat. Yeah, it's odd.
Versus because then.
But at least I don't mind with that. That's just incorrect technique for like optimal engagement. It's not within reason. It's not super dangerous because the bend of the knees actually kind of softens everything.
No, but then what doesn't happen without the thought of the hip hinge, your lower back starts to compensate.
Lower back.
Yeah, because you're not.
I suppose so.
Because that's just my personal thing that I've found.
Point.
You are right, because some people do still keep their chest open and perform the exercise right, and like you say, it's more of a squat, and then they say, well, I don't really feel it where.
Yeah, I don't feel it where they should.
Yeah, and that's why. But
there's not getting hurt. Whereas
no,
smashing your wrists to pieces on a clean,
yes,
or a snatch. Worse, a snatch because it goes up and over.
Yeah, the clean, I find people get bruised here. And don't get me wrong, if you're doing something complex, or maybe you're doing like, we're doing 10 just cleans, like clean down, you're going to get a little bit of a mark because the kettlebell's coming up and over onto the forearm.
Sometimes rub it.
Yeah. But it shouldn't be smashing in. And the same with the clean rotates round. People find that the snatch, again, the kettlebell should rotate round. But people, when they snatch, just go like,
lob it over.
Right up and over.
Lob it over.
And it smashes their. Oh, that is painful. But even if I find sometimes when you get a bit tired with kettlebell, your form goes, because that does happen, and that's sort of something you need to be really mindful of, keeping your form good. Sometimes I'm like, get your form back in check. Like, it's slipping. I can feel that I didn't rotate. Or
sometimes for me, that's where I'll use it as like, I'll check my ego and be like, I haven't got this weight today.
Yeah.
I'm my form's all over the place.
I'm
just gonna bring the weight back down and get the quality in. So yeah, I agree. Like, I think the biggest thing to consider is just spend a bit of time learning the technique.
Definitely.
Really get it nailed. I know you're the same, but people comment on how clean my clean is. I'm like, well, yeah, because I've made all those mistakes, by the way. Like, that's not because we're fucking gurus or we're super smart. Like, we've made all those mistakes, so you don't have to. So spend a little bit of time just getting to understand the form. And you know what? Just bring back asking people for advice. If you see someone doing it in the gym,
which you don't see that often.
You don't see a ton of people kettlebell training.
We do see people kettlebell swinging.
Mm-hmm.
I never see anybody do a Turkish get up. And when I do,
the last time I saw someone do a Turkish get up in the gym.
When I do perform the get up, I can see that people are like,
people are watching. Yeah.
On that side note, though, if I could I might ask you this question actually. For me, if you could do one kettlebell move and that was it, period, what would it be?
Oh, it'd be the Turkish get up.
It would be the get up.
Yeah.
It has to be. Works over 600 muscles.
Also, I can get everything else I need pretty much from something else. I can clean with a barbell. I can snatch with a barbell.
Mm-hmm.
I can squat, row, overhead press. I can swing with a dumbbell.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying these are the best ways.
Yeah, but you can do that.
But I mean, yeah, you can. I suppose you can do a Turkish get up with a bar or a.
I've done it with a barbell.
Yeah.
As a challenge, that is that is hard.
But yeah, maybe I'm taking the question too seriously. But yeah, I think it would be the
Turkish get up. You don't ever see people doing it, and the one thing that I actually get feedback from my client is they're training this training method in the gym, and they're having people come up to them and say, "What are you training for?" Like, that's really cool. Like, what are you doing? Or what are you doing that for? So it's really, really unusual. I think though, more than anything, I mean, I feel it because I've been kettlebell training I actually started my kettlebell classes in 2023 in person. And I was doing them online before, but obviously, just like you were saying, I was a little bit limited to the weight. I only had 12 kg, but that was enough at the time. Now I'm using like 18, 20, 24. It makes me feel like a monster.
Yeah.
I think the
there's something quite primal about kettlebell training, isn't it?
Yeah. Where I'm like,
Caveman like.
yes. Like, especially when you're doing big movements like clean
Mm.
and snatches, where you have to have complete control over your body as well as the kettlebell. And that's when I feel really tight and strong, when I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, I absolutely love it. But like you said, and you mentioned, I do go to the gym once a week. So I run 2 kettlebell classes. That's predominantly how I train, 2 full body kettlebell classes. I do go to the gym once a week. In that training session, I add in movement patterns that I don't train. So, you know, I use some bar work, I use dumbbells, I do calisthenic work. But I love KB training. But I think the points that we've covered, both positive and negative, are really, really important, and definitely something that should be considered. If not, if you're looking at how you can implement this into your training, I think if you are in the gym, maybe look at to keep your compounds as they are. So you compound as you squat, your bench, or your pull up. And you can keep that sort of barbell work I like, and then put in the accessory work with kettlebells, swings, windmills, halos, snatches, cleans, stuff like that, that will really enhance your training.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion.
I agree. All right, let's bring this one home. I am sure we've left a ton of stuff on the table, both positive, negative, or otherwise, but I mean, that's the best we can kind of cram into just under an hour. So
Yeah.
Kettlebells, in conclusion, highly unusual way to train, tons of benefits, no real cons, but some drawbacks.
Drawbacks is a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I just think, but again, I think this is everything that's wrong with the fitness industry right now. And I actually blame coaches like us, right? Because there's this kind of like, this is the only way to do X.
Mm.
You know, we see it like only vegan or only carnivore or only this or only that. You know, I call it kind of the iPhone Android thing. Like, this is the hill I'm going to die on. Like, no, sometimes it can be and. Right?
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
just have to be or. And it's just applying some common sense. And use that chest example, right? For me, I love kettlebell training. I don't think there's a bad exercise to be done, but I don't get enough out of the chest bit. So I'm just going to go and do some bench press.
Yeah, you've always said that as well.
You know, it's just about applying some common sense. Can you build an amazing physique, a great level of fitness, and overall health from just kettlebells? Yes. Could you be a bit stronger, a bit fit? You know, could you get slightly better results if you were to mix it up? Sure, absolutely. But you know, it's and not or. I can't stress that enough in the fitness space.
And I think if you're a bit interested, and it's like piqued your interest, and you're like, oh, I wouldn't mind seeing what this is about. Maybe you have some kettlebells at home, but you've never used them. Like you said, you're using them as a doorstop. I do have a full body live workout for free on my YouTube channel that you can go and try.
You should definitely check that out. And we'll link that, shall we?
Yeah.
In the show notes.
And I run on-demand classes as well. So you literally train with me in the studio, talking through step by step. I take care of everything for you. But the live class is free. You might as well give it a go. See if you enjoy it. See if you enjoy that style of training. It covers all the basic moves.
What's your YouTube channel?
Becky Dunn Fitness.
There we go. So, guys, as always, thank you for joining us. Anything else you want?
No,
Yeah,
absolutely not. I think we've covered it all.
there we go. Peace out.
Ciao.